Okay, so next let's talk about video game consoles. So video game console manufacturers, they are all platforms, PS4, PS5, Xbox, Wii, Switch, whatever. So in this case, they are connecting game developers, those sellers, and the players, those buyers, all right? And again, there are some cash flows. So first, if you are a buyer or if you are a player, you're going to buy consoles. So you first pay something to get that particular machine. You bring that back to your home, and then that means you join the platform. And then you're going to buy some games. Okay, when you buy some games, you pay those game developers, and once that happens, the game developers is going to share revenues with the game platforms. And what's interesting here is that they also pay the so-called Sdk fee. So that means software development toolkits. So they pay this Sdk fee to get the authorization from game platforms, saying that now you are authorized to develop a game that is compatible to our platform. Then you would be authorized to sell, and once you sell, you pay us revenue sharing. Okay? So you pay this Sdk fee before you may start to build and sell your game. Obviously, that's some kind of listing fee. All right, and in this industry, this Sdk fee typically exist and can sometimes be very high. So there can be all kinds of reasons for this to happen, of course. But maybe if you just think about the bargaining here, we understand that if you are a game developer, you need game platforms. You need them as channels. And if you believe the channels have high bargaining power, that makes sense for you to pay them. But at the same time, there are also some game developers that are really big. They are big companies, right? And if you are a game platform, you also need game developers. Otherwise, there's no way for you to attract players to buy your game console. So basically, if this is a universal thing in this particular industry, if big companies, small companies, they are all paying a lot before they start to generate revenues to the game platforms, there must be some reasons, right? So again, who should be the subsidizer? Who should be the subsidizee? Why? And then, do players have positive same-side network externality? Is it strong for video games? And then finally, developers, they are willing to pay a lot to get the right to create games and sell games. Why not the opposite? Why this is always true? Okay, that's our questions. So why don't you spend a few minutes to think about it? I'm going to give you 10 seconds so that you may pause the video. Okay, so let's do some discussions. So the first one is that we want to do cross-subsidization, okay? So you have developers, you have game players, all right? And I guess after some analysis, you probably would agree that players, they have high price elasticities, okay? Because they already paid and they probably don't want to pay more. And developers, their price elasticity is low. So in this case, they should be the subsidizer. Well, how about other factors? Maybe you would think about, how about this? We're going to talk about, again, positive same-side network externality. At this side, it is positive, right? At this side, it is negative. So again, we want to have our developers to be subsidizers. Easiness to collect money. Well, again, you want developers to be subsidizers. Marginal cost of growing, I guess the same thing. And if you think about switching cost and multi-homing cost, well, in that case, maybe we cannot tell. Because for both sides, multi-homing and switching are costly. So that's maybe that factor is not so critical here. But for the others, I guess you would agree. Developers should be the subsidizer, and the players should be the subsidizee. That basically may explain why those game consoles are typically sold at a price that is lower than its marginal production cost. That makes sense. That makes sense to give discounts on the machines, right? So that they pay more to buy your materials. That's basically the same strategy as coffee machine, copying machine, or coffee makers in your office. Okay, it's very likely that it's a widely adapted strategy that those coffee makers, the makers of those coffee makers, they're going to have distributors talking to each company, saying that, hey, give me a space. I'm going to put one coffee machine into your office. It's free. It's just that you need to buy materials. You need to buy those materials from those coffee providers. All right. So that's typically the idea. Okay. So that's part one. Part two, I guess you also agree that regarding games, the positive same-side network externality is even stronger than readers because people do need to have people to play with so that the game becomes an interesting game. That's also why this is very important. Okay. The last question is that we want to explain why all those developers somehow are willing to pay to create games. So there can be, again, a lot of reasons. And I guess you agree that, well, for these platforms, for these channels, they are strong. So that can be one reason. But what's an interesting thing is that this also has something to do with the specific or the special feature of this particular industry. So we're talking about the game industry, okay? For the game industry, there's one thing that is special, is that you do see a lot of small companies. They can be newly created by what? By young people, okay? So why is that? If you think about semiconductors, if you think about opening a bank, opening a university, opening a hospital, that's difficult, right? If you are just if you just have a few young persons, you are not able to open a semiconductor manufacturing company. You're not going to do a bank. You're not going to open a hospital or university, right? That's too expensive. But opening a game developing company is not so difficult. You just need to one guy being able to write computer programs, another guy being able to do some sales, another guy doing some management, another guy doing some art design. Pretty much you are done. So that's something you may do, okay, for young people. And also, young people like what? Young people like to play games, right? No one cares about finance, marketing, or semiconductor. They want to play games. So that's why you're always facing, if you are running a big company in this industry, you're always facing some young talents. They try to create new companies and join the industry to be your competitor. That's not good, right? Technically, we say the entry barrier of this industry is low. And if you are an existing player in this industry, if you are a leader, a big guy in this industry, you don't want that happen. You want the entry barriers to be high, okay? And if that's the case, that's going to help you maintain your competence. Okay, so what's the best way to create a high entry barrier? Let's say we developers all agree that we need to pay a lot to create games, okay? So it may be easy to create a company, but if you want to make games, you need to first pay $1 million or something to the platforms. Well, that's huge. So young people, they need to borrow some money from the banks and then try to do this. And if they fail in the first game or second game, they disappear, or they get hired by big companies, all right? So that's why big companies, they may find it useful, they may find it good to say, okay, we're going to say yes to those platforms by paying them those fixed fee or SDK fee. That's due to the competition at the supplier side. Okay, when you see the low entry barrier, that means competition is intense at the supplier side. And if the competition is intense, that means there is strong negative same-side network externality at that side. If that side has a strong negative same-side network externality, that then pay. They are willing to pay. They are willing to be subsidizers. So that's why you should do that. Okay? So that's the idea about video game consoles.